My name is Ricky Leung, and I am an Asian American. I grew up in Greensboro, North Carolina. I was born in Hong Kong and moved there when I was 8 years old. My family moved there because my mom's aunt ran a restaurant, Chinese restaurant in Greensboro. For me personally, when we moved from Hong Kong to Greensboro, I don't recall it being much of a big deal. Other than that, like I had never seen so many like green things before, like everywhere. I think I remember recalling one of the first videos that my mom showed us about her very first visit to the United States was a video of a squirrel, because it was like she had never seen like so many squirrels just running around everywhere. Um, I just kind of looking back, that's kind of one thing that sticks out in my mind. I think I was also young enough at the time that it wasn't a big deal for me, the moving, and it I don't think it really registered in my mind how big of impact it would have for the rest of my life, really. And my older brother was 14 at the time, so it was a much bigger deal for him in terms of having to readjust to like connections and friends and all that, and obviously also for my parents who had to um, really like start over in terms of like careers and everything. Um, for me, the biggest impact was being away from my extended family, who at the time were pretty close to me. Like all my closest friends were my cousins. My parents worked at a shipping company, I think. My dad worked in the I believe the like inventory like warehouse, and my mom worked in, I think, like the accounting side of things, where she had to call the warehouse a lot for her work, and that's actually how they met. Um, so that was their background, and then when they came to North Carolina, my mom worked in my aunt's restaurant. My dad, I think I remember working at Kroger when Kroger was still a thing in Greensboro. I think they're gone now, right? He left there to work at K&W cafeteria, and he loved that job, and he had been there for many years. I think when I graduated from college, my parents left to move to Texas, for mostly because of job reasons for my mom. And my dad was super sad to leave K&W because a lot of his friends were also made there as well. And I visited K&W quite a few times, and it was like always embarrassing for me because like he'll always be like, "This is my son, my son."
Oh,
So it was sweet. And then so he had a really good bond with like his coworkers and with the customers. As you know, like K&W has like very regular customers, particularly like the older generation going there for lunch and stuff on
yeah.
a regular basis. And so he made a lot of friends that way. My dad's English isn't the best, and his hearing is also not the best. And so it's always fascinating. It was always fascinating to me growing up, like watching him interact with the customers, and the coworkers at K&W. Um, there was actually not a lot of words communicated, and a lot of laughter and gestures and things like that. Celebrating traditional holidays, traditional Chinese holidays, is super important to my parents. So we did a lot of those with our own family, and also with the local Chinese church. So most of the big festivals we celebrated that way. Um, I mentioned that I had an aunt in Greensboro, so on occasion we celebrated with my aunt and her family. Um, they did end up moving to California. I can't remember exactly when, at some point. So uh, the bulk of what I remember have been mostly just my parents and my brother and I, in terms of like our family celebrations. My school and friend life did very much feel very separate from my family, my heritage, part of myself. It's very, um, well, very compartmentalized in that way. There are some spaces like my close friends I invite to my house, and like their parents knew my parents, that sort of thing. Um, so that piece was still connected my life in that way. In terms of like my interactions at schools, yeah, it was pretty separate from my family life. I think um, we did have an outlet in terms of connecting to like our heritage and culture through the Chinese church in Greensboro, the Greensboro Chinese Christian Church, and that was a very important connection to for my mom, in particular. And they were definitely a crucial part of like helping our family adjust to life to Greensboro. I wanted to play music. My parents wanted me to do piano. I know like one song on the piano. It's just too many keys for me to keep track of. And then I thought about guitar, but then it's also like so many different chords to keep track of. And that's how I settled on drums, because there are only like 7 things to hit. I think in my school life and a lot of the values that I learned from both my parents and from the church, is to like really like care for people, and so social justice has been very important to me throughout my entire life, really. um, I did not connect that with Asian American issues until really actually after college. Participated in the this program called Anytown with NCCJ, and so that was another important part of my awareness and growing up as a social justice advocate. This is an interesting story because you may be aware UNC has a festival called Fall Fest at the beginning of the school year, where all the school clubs are at. So I remember as a freshman, one of the tables at Fall Fest was for the ASA, the Asian Student Association. I don't know if they're still called that, or I think they might be called something else now. But what I remember was I walked by the table, and then I was then like immediately surrounded by like Asian students, and I was freaked out and I ran away. And I never looked back. And so I unfortunately did not interact with the Asian Student Association at UNC for the rest of my time at college. I may regret that. At the same time, I'm still where I am today, so I think I don't necessarily like 100% regret it. Like, looking back, I would probably have acted differently with like the knowledge I have now, but it was intense. With my journalism experience, I was able to get an internship that turned into a contract job at National Geographic in DC, and there at National Geographic, one of my coworkers at the time, her name is Asia. She puts this packet on my desk, and she says, "Apply for this," and then she scooted away. And then I looked at it, and it was a job application, because no, she knew that like my contract job at National Geographic was coming to an end and likely not going to be renewed. So it was for a job at the Smithsonian Asian Pacific American Center. So I applied. I didn't think I would get it. So I just applied anyway. And then I got a call back a few months later. I had actually forgotten that I applied for the job. Um, I went in for an interview, half didn't really know what I was doing. And then also was like, I still want to like do my own thing and freelance and do some photos. And they let me do that. So then I was like, okay, awesome, I'll take the job. I think that was probably one of the career-wise one of the most formative decisions I made, and that started off in my career in and awareness of my Asian American identity. At the Smithsonian, at the time, the director's name was Franklin Odo, and Franklin is a big name in like Asian American studies, and I learned so much from him, and including like where the term Asian American came from and the history of Asian American activism. And it was very inspiring working there, and to the point where I really like thought back about growing up in North Carolina. Why didn't I feel like there was this I would say like rootedness, I think, to the American identity that like and Asian identity together, right? Rather than like the way that I had thought of myself as like an American citizen and someone of Asian heritage. And so having that like Asian American identity to me was really crucial to really think about myself as part of like the country in a radically different way. Like learning about folks like Yuri Kochiyama and Grace Lee Boggs and Larry Idlong. It's like, even though like I myself haven't had like generations of history here, knowing that like they're folks who have laid the groundwork for like a political identity essentially in that way was very powerful for me, and particularly because I've learned about like the civil rights movement and about the labor movement and about the rich history of Black people, of Latinx folks, particularly in the labor movement and farm worker movement, and knowing that there is also alongside Dolores Huerta, alongside Malcolm X, are folks like Larry Idlong and Yuri Kochiyama was again like very inspiring to me, and part of the reason why I wanted to come back to North Carolina and start something like NCAT. Back then I didn't think it would be an organization. That I was thinking that like I just need to like bring back this knowledge and share it with people that I know, and like organize like Asian Americans in North Carolina in some way. I didn't even like think about like what it would look like at the time. I applied for a job at the North Carolina Justice Center when I was, and this was when my job, funding for my job at the Smithsonian was near an end. And applied for the job down here and got an interview. And one of the main things I brought up was like I want to work on things that relates to Asian American activism. And so throughout my time at the Justice Center, I've worked on things like hosting like voter registration drives and things on my own. The first book that Franklin Odo suggested that I read, and it is a book, Asian American Dreams by Helen Zia. I love that book, and I would definitely point to it as the book that flipped the switch for me of like making me aware of this Asian American identity and like what needs to be done, I guess. I think that is I think when a lot of, particularly what happened in Atlanta, really kind of highlighted and like put a spotlight more intense spotlight on what's been happening. It was pretty hard, as I imagine it was for you all as well. I see out of what's happened over the past year and a half, more of that like awareness and the need to uplift our community stories, even by this project, right? By more and more people knowing that like we're not alone, like that we have a community, I think is the biggest takeaway. And whether it is for folks to join us at NCAT or not, I am so glad that there is like this growing Asian American community in North Carolina. And also like I see it growing in a way that is also like very mindful of the diversity in our community as well. So that makes me very happy that I am like also learning so much from everyone, and I am excited to see what we can do together moving forward to really continue to build and mobilize our community power here in North Carolina, and in our nation and in the world.